Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
Thursday, May 22nd, just hours ago, a couple hours ago, the House passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I fear we'll have this phrase in our history books forevermore if this actually becomes a law. Well, whether it becomes a law or not, there'll be a story about it one way or another.
Trump is a master of branding, whether it is crooked Hillary, a perfect phone call, or a big beautiful bill. Name it and claim it, baby. Name it and claim it.
I don't know if it is good branding. I feel like you're kind of asking for getting punched in the mouth with a title like that.
Well, it could be like a mission accomplished type situation, but I think it works. I think it works for Donald Trump, and I think it speaks to his power of positive thinking. And I think generally he's say what you will about Trump, but he knows branding.
Well, he passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, then they lost the House in 2018.
Yeah, I think that's, I wouldn't confuse correlation with causation, but yeah, and I'm not saying it's everything.
But they thought that was going to be the thing. Like, we elected us, we gave you tax cuts, what's the problem here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you can call something a big, beautiful bill, but there may be some ugly things in that big, beautiful bill. What's in it, Bill? He's a beautiful Bill. I gotta say, he's very attractive, Bill.
That's not a bad Trump. You're getting there.
I'm getting better. I'm like 10 years late to the game. I mean, because I think I had Bill Clinton down at the end. I will say, as a public speaker, when you're out there on the stage, if you can throw out some impersonations, it doesn't hurt. So
yeah. Actually, I don't know what they might have changed overnight, so forgive me for not being completely up to date. The Republicans always said they would never, ever vote for a bill without like 72 hours to look at the text. Obviously, that's never actually happens. We're never going to pass a giant omnibus bill. We're going to do it in small chunks so you know what's in it. Yeah. But the basic idea is you're extending the Trump tax cuts from 2017, which are going to expire. They added some new ones on top of that. I think they did the no tax on tips and the no tax on overtime. I don't think they added the no tax on Social Security benefits. But again, there are so many moving parts overnight that forgive me if I'm missing something. And there are Medicaid reforms, which the Congressional Budget Office estimates will Medicaid reforms plus Affordable Care Act reforms, which will remove insurance for 8.6 million people and save something around, I think, $800 billion over 10 years.
It the bill removes it, or it creates paperwork so onerous that they estimate that many people will drop off the rolls.
I mean, I think it's a combination of
things. Or is it a work requirement?
Well, the work requirement, there's work requirements, there's paperwork. So it's going to have that net impact, and according to not just CBO but other independent analysts, that this is not deficit neutral. It's not a deficit reduction bill. It is going to increase the deficit. The tax cuts are much bigger than the offsets, and Speaker Johnson promised this was not going to increase the deficit. And they haven't done that. I think they're also taking out some of the climate tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, and they also have some increase in the SALT cap to appease
the state and local tax deduction.
Right, so that loses money for the government because if more people can deduct taxes in those areas.
So did the moderates? So the moderate Republicans who represent blue states that have high state taxes, those Republicans want to be able to deduct state and local taxes from your federal income tax.
Correct.
And that was a sticking point. Did the moderates cave on that, or did they get Did they get
Well,
something?
they got half a loaf.
Okay.
They got something. I'm trying. Again, that was another moving part thing that I'm not 100% sure where they landed. But I think it was a 40,000 because the current cap's at 10,000. I thought it went up to 40 with some line drawn at income level. So everybody got. I think they moved up the date for the Medicaid savings, so it wasn't as backloaded. I think they did that for the change in the green tax credits. So everyone got something in this, but no one got deficit reduction, which is what they said, or not even deficit neutrality, which they said they were going to get.
Isn't that required, though, to pass something via reconciliation?
I think they changed that rule. It used to be the case.
Okay.
I think they got to do a little something where it can't increase the deficit in like the out years. Like after 10 years, it can't be estimated to increase deficit. But then
that's why these things keep expiring, right?
Right. Exactly.
So interesting.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
The kind of thing that the Freedom Caucus says they weren't going to abide by anymore. No more smoke and mirrors. Bank your savings up front to actually reduce debt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bigger cave here. I mean, you're talking about who caved. It's the people that said we're not going to do this anymore.
And so Republicans could only afford to lose two votes. They lost 2.
No, they could have lost 3. I mean,
wouldn't 3 have killed it?
Assuming that everybody voted.
Okay.
They
lost 2. It was Thomas Massey and somebody else. But Chip Roy either voted or abstained, right?
No, Roy voted yes. I mean, he was the biggest antagonist about it. He was railing against it literally 18 hours before the vote. And he said, well, the White House promised me they would do more Medicaid savings by executive order. I mean, come on. I mean, that is the figgiest of fig leaves. And
so look, these people who, and for years, I would go to Club for Growth conferences and moderate panels, and I'm, hear all about we have to tackle this debt before it tackles us, Paul Ryan kind of stuff, and some of these guys, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I'm concerned about spending, but they were like radicals about it. And yet somehow when Trump does it, it's okay. Perfectly fine. And Trump spends, he is the king of debt, Bill. He spends more than anybody.
I mean, I'm not the hawkiest deficit hawk. I mean, what's hard about debating this is there isn't a established number that where you cross from good to bad in terms of the amount of annual deficit and cumulative debt you carry. We know that the debt to GDP ratio has grown. I think we're at we're higher than we've been since World War II. I think the deficit to GDP ratio, it's not record levels, but it's higher than it was. But no one can say definitively like this is a good number, this is the bad number. So you can always fudge. And certainly those who were hawkish in the past have drawn lines saying we can't go past this line. We go past it and things are still okay. So you certainly can argue the Dick Cheney argument, well, deficits don't matter. I mean, he said that in a political context, not in a substantive context. But you can make those sorts of arguments. What's different here is that you had a handful of Republicans who were vehemently rejecting those arguments, who have folded, number one. And two, the bond markets are not accepting those arguments. And that's not to say that bond markets are geniuses. They could be wrong. They could be panicking and then pull back when things seem to be okay. But you can't just argue, as some Republicans are, well, don't listen to the CBO numbers. They get it wrong all the time. It's not just them. There are other, like Penn Warden model shows deficits will grow. Moody's just downgraded the U.S. credit rating. The bond yields right after the bill passed started going up, and they were going up before all this. I mean, the Moody's analysis was not that we're worried about theoretical things. We're worried about this bill. We're worried about this bill not doing the job, and we're worried about mandatory spending, which is Social Security and Medicare. And again, I'm not trying to hitch my wagon to that analysis and say if you don't do this, all is lost. But things are happening that Republicans would have pointed to, certainly in a Democratic administration, to say the wheels are coming off here.
Yeah.
And they don't have a great counter to it.
Bill, another part of kind of conservative free market orthodoxy was we should have a simple tax code, a flat tax, that we should not have these carve-outs that create distortions and basically reward rent seeking. And what do Republicans do? They have this no tax on tips. It is a great political slogan, Bill. It worked so well that Kamala Harris had to steal the idea from Donald Trump. It is a brilliant slogan, and once again, Trump knows branding. But that's precisely what this does. Couldn't everything be a tip? The massage is just $20, but the tip, the tip is huge. Just the tip, Bill.
Yeah.
Once again, it's great politics, but could be destructive. Certainly a net negative in terms of governance.
Well, I mean, it can be gamed. I think a lot of lower income workers. I mean, one thing the Republicans did under Trump that did simplify the code to some extent is the higher standard deduction. So you have less need to itemize things if you're using the standard deduction. Whether that's good or bad tax policy, I can't tell you. I just know, just for my own, I do my own taxes. It has made my tax preparation easier. Maybe I should go through the effort to see if the itemizing would be better for me. But I don't think it does, and so I haven't bothered. And so it's simpler. But if you're taking advantage of that,
why don't you go to H&R Block?
Why should I pay them money when I can do it myself? If I'm using that, then I'm not itemizing. I'm not going to take advantage of the tax on tips. It's not clear. Like these analyses that I've seen, that it's not really going to provide that much benefit to lower income people. Although the branding makes it sounds like it. It sounds like it's for the waitresses, and those folks.
And I don't know, if they made it exclusive for waitresses, that would actually make sense. Or waitresses, coffee shops, that kind of thing. And I'll tell you why. To me, that does make sense, because I was a waiter, and not a good one, and for a brief time. Go Watson's Restaurant in Frederick, Maryland, baby. But back then, there was some rule where you only had to report 1% of the tips. This is many years ago. And you were getting a lot of cash. I don't think anybody really reported the cash tips they were getting. But nowadays, everyone's using a debit card. Few people are using cash. It's becoming less and less. And then you're prompted to leave the 20%, 15, 25%, whatever, leave $1 on the little, screen. And so I think that as a result of that, waiters and waitresses are probably being hit harder by the tax man than they would have been 10 or 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was a waiter for one summer, and you're supposed to report your tips at a little electronic device at the end of the night. And the boss was like, "Just don't do that. You don't have to do that. Just keep your cash."
It was I think it was sort of a wink and a nod, that you're making $1 an hour plus tips,
right? And
catch as catch can kind of thing.
I will note that I did report my tips.
Of course you did, Bill. Me too. 100%.
Also, but the no tax on overtime also something that sounds like it's for the working stiff, but there are people who actually make very good money in overtime, and so that actually skewed. It's not necessarily millionaires and billionaires, but you definitely got people who make six figures.
Well, imagine if you're a plumber or something like that. I mean, this could be very, very lucrative, obviously.
Right. So it doesn't cost out as something that really skews to benefit lower income people, and it is, as far as restraining debt and deficit, it doesn't help. So they haven't done anything to tackle that problem, because that problem is hard and it would require political risk, and they're not interested in it. Even the Freedom Caucus folks who talk a good game, so that they want steep Medicaid cuts and steeper cuts into mandatory programs, they don't put it on the line and actually do it. Now, let's see having said all that, let's see what happens in the Senate, because the Senate is not necessarily going to take with a House bill and pass it as is. They may well make it more moderate. They may go easier on Medicaid and easier on the green tax credits, because a lot of those tax credits benefit red states. And then we'll see again if the Freedom Caucus types can live up to their own standards, or will, in the face of getting a talking to from Donald Trump, will say, we don't want to really risk making him mad.
I think if Trump wants it, they're for it. And Trump wants to make a deal. He wants a deal. He wants to be able to say he passed this big, beautiful bill. So other than Thomas Massie, who, say what you will, seems to have a spine, seems to have an ethos, seems to have a worldview, everyone else pretty much will, on the Republican side, is going to do what Trump tells them to do.
Well, I don't know how long the Senate's going to take. Kudos to Speaker Johnson. I think maybe he moved his deadlines around, but at one point he said by Memorial Day, so, points to him. I think the Treasury Secretary said he wants it by July 4th. So you got roughly a month here on the Senate side. And we're on the verge of Trump's tariffs actually being felt at the store shelf level. Those haven't really hit yet. So looking at, Trump's, job approval average right now, it's actually ticked up a little bit in the Real Clear Politics over the last week or so. He's now at an average of 47.6 approval, 49.3 disapprove, so not its worst. So it's a pretty wide range of numbers there. You have a couple out. You have Ipsos at Trump -10. You have Insider Advantage of Trump +11. Far more underwater than not. Marquette, he's -8. Daily Mail, he's a tie. So pick your favorite. But a lot of that downward trajectory on his polls was because of the market gyrations, but you haven't had the real hit on prices yet. Inflation in March and April was okay. If those do start to hit harder, if there are supply chain issues, do those numbers go down again, go down further? And that's where is the real acid test. Can just Trump telling you to do it make you do it? Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, is my fate intertwined with Trump or not? That might be different in late June, July than it is right now.
I would also say in this political environment, and considering Donald Trump's ability to propagandize and manipulate, it's unlikely to me that he would just have a precipitous decline in the first 100 days of his administration that just continues to fall. He's going to have ups and downs. And so, if you're the Democrats, you want him to be, sort of bottoming out a year from now, probably. Right. And so good news. If you're Democrats, he hasn't, there's still room for him to fall. And I do think that some of the damaging effects of his policies have yet to manifest. So
there's more room for him to fall. There's more room for him to pull back from his worst policies. He could lift all the tariffs if he wanted to, and you'd have a market explosion after that. He's tried to tap the gas, tap the brake, tap the gas, tap the brake to keep the market at bay. And I think that has worked to some extent in the short run. But if you're still leaving significant tariffs in place at the end of the day, at some point, seemingly very soon, you're going to actually see the price jump at the counter. And then you really can't, play the shell game anymore.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, Bill, I do want to talk Joe Biden, because I have a piece coming out, I think, Friday in the LA Times that I wrote about Biden. It's somewhat nuanced. And you've written a couple things at Washington Monthly. I mean, obviously, what we're talking about here is that there have been a couple of these big books that are documenting how the Democrats and the media downplayed the degree to which Biden was suffering cognitive decline during his presidency. And now, additionally, we have, it's been reported, it's been confirmed that he has an advanced stage of prostate cancer, which raises other questions. But Bill, what's your take overall on, we'll call it Bidengate? What do you think?
I wouldn't call it Bidengate. Number one, I don't think.
Because you're part of the Politburo, Bill.
I think starting from a premise of scandal is not borne out from the available facts. I think we had a highly awkward situation with grave consequences, and from what I do know, I can certainly put blame on Joe Biden for not being honest with himself in terms of how much gas he had in the tank. I can certainly be mad at Donlin for not giving Biden accurate information about his own polling numbers. But in terms of the Democratic Party, people in elective office, people that want to run for president in 2028, to treat this as you have some sort of political and moral obligation to either self-flagellate yourself for your own defense of Joe Biden last year, or if you were a step removed from it, take shots at others who defended Biden and throw them under the bus to prove your independence and prove that you are represent a clean break from the past. The assumption that is necessary for the Democratic Party to survive is made up. I mean, there's no evidence of that. There's really not a poll taken. Even if you took a poll, I'm not sure how much merit it would have, because what you say today might not be what people would say in 26 or 28. And I think the available facts don't argue that there was a deliberate cover-up of a known ailment. There is no diagnosis of dementia. I have my suspicions, which I wrote about. I mean, I'm someone who defended Biden up until the debate.
Let the record state that here in the DMZ, I've been saying Biden was old and doddering, and you were defending him until the debate. And then I think it became, that was in June. So then I think it became very clear, and I think you quickly said he should get out.
Well, even to be fully candid here, the day after the debate, I did not tell him to get out. I said that was bad, but you can fix this like Reagan fixed his first debate, where that brought up age-related questions. If you get out there very forcefully right away, and take the questions and show you still got it.
He didn't. He didn't still have it.
When he didn't do that, that's when I said, okay, I still can't know what exactly went awry there, but you're not giving me anything to reassure me. And so I have now legitimate questions about what condition you have, whether you know it or not, whether it's been diagnosed or not. You're not subjecting to the testing that would let us know and make that public. And I cited the example of Woodrow Wilson, where medical historians can say now that he had early stage dementia by 1919, even before the big stroke that he had in the fall of 1919, which they didn't, fully cop to with the public, and even though he was incapacitated, he didn't step down. So, like, I see the parallels there. And I even said at that moment, he should not just withdraw, he should resign. So I understand that argument. But at the same time, the medical historians for Wilson, and there's one particular named Burt Park, who said, and I'm not quoting it, but it's in the article that I wrote, the signs are not necessarily clear in real time. Because, you could take things like senior moments, you're forgetful, you're disjointed, you're rigid, you're irritable. Like, there are other explanations for those things. It doesn't have to mean dementia, let alone what stage of dementia.
And he had good days. He had a good State of the Union.
That's what is confusing to people, even if you're up close, and why you can rationalize that maybe this isn't dementia. Yeah. And that's why it falls short of cover-up for me.
Well, and then you start rationalizing. Let's use, so there's two extreme, there's cover-up and then there's rationalizing, right? And I'm with you on the rationalizing, which is to say, he's got good days, he's got bad days, but then you start saying, well, but this is the best gig I'm gonna have. Like, I could do cable news hits, but I'm never going to be a top advisor to a president. And then you can start saying, well, maybe it's pretty bad now, but if we drop out now, Kamala Harris, she's a joke. She's going to get smoked by Donald Trump. And by the way, Donald Trump is this existential threat. So you can talk yourself into, let's prop up the old guy. It's the ends justify the means. So where I think I come down is not that this was a devious, evil cabal, but that this was a snowball that happened. It happens gradually. They start maybe lying to themselves and rationalizing and making excuses, and then they get to a point where actually trying to run out the clock is not a crazy idea.
Right. So they told themselves that until too many Democrats were ready to pull the plug on him, and he felt like, I don't have enough party support. And so, from Biden's own words, like, short of Schumer and Pelosi pressuring him, he would have stayed in. They told themselves, he told himself that he could still do it. That's different than cover up. And it's bad judgment, but it's not cover up.
But this brings us to my next point. We live in a day and age that is very conspiratorial, and where trust in elites, particularly the Democrats, is very low. And so, fair or not, this contributes to the sense that there is a conspiracy, that the Democrats, the elites, the establishment, the deep state can't be trusted. And it also really, creates a scenario where some people say, well, Trump lies, but Joe Biden lied. They tried to perpetrate this huge fraud on the American public. So the Republicans lie, the Democrats lie, everybody lies. It's kind of a wash, right?
That's what Republicans are trying to do, even just injecting conspiracy theories around the cancer diagnosis, like right off the bat, without any evidence whatsoever.
Right, but that was also, that was advanced primarily by Zeke Emanuel. Is that the guy's name?
So it didn't help, but Donald Trump Jr. went first.
Okay, but I saw it on Morning Joe.
Yeah, the announcement was Sunday. He went out Monday morning, and what report I've heard since, Emanuel was like, he emphasized that the cancer had to have been there for over a decade, and he kind of sort of said, well, it's possible that they didn't do the test.
Yeah,
and I've heard since. There's not that it's a consensus view, but there's a lot of argument that he shouldn't have had the test. That people that age don't get that test. It's not a perfect test. It does. There's no data, or at least there's not strong data to say that your health outcomes would improve if you had that test. And that's why I didn't get the test. So again, to assume conspiracy is unfair. There's no actual reporting to suggest that there was
I agree. In fairness to Emanuel, he did not assert that there was a conspiracy, but I think he did.
But he should have known better. He should have known better
oncologist
that kind of comment was going to feed conspiracy theorists.
I think he fanned the flames of it with his interview. Yes.
And I don't think Democrats, just narrowing our pool of Democrats who want to run for president, I don't think they have to dance to the tune of the conspiracy theorists. I don't think they have an obligation. I mean, and let's be open here. The argument that Democrats have to admit there was some kind of cover up and disavow it is designed to screw Kamala and Pete. If you're a Democrat who wants to run for, so if you're a Republican that wants to see Democrats lose, you want to put everyone in as tough a vice as possible. If you're a Democrat that wants to run for president and you're not Kamala or Pete, then you have incentive to make this a standard because they're the ones who are going to have the toughest time answering that question.
I completely agree. And, Pete was in the cabinet. Kamala was the VP. They were in close proximity, presumably, to Biden. And if they weren't, then that's also troubling. That's also a red flag. And so, yeah, what did you know? When did you know it? Is the question. And look, it's going to resonate. I'm not saying it's fair, but it's going to resonate. I mean, I can tell you, just thinking of folks I know that I come in contact with, they didn't even know that Joe Biden. Everybody who watched TV knew that Biden couldn't even put two words together. Didn't know resonate from resignate. And it seems like a plausible conspiracy, and it's for some reason that I don't fully understand. You can equate it to Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels, and Donald Trump summoning a Capitol riot, and Donald Trump refusing, to honor a free and fair election. It becomes like a wash almost. And so, even though I think it's a stretch and it's obviously a strategic ploy, I think it's a very potent weapon. And so Joe Biden, not only sabotaged Democrats' 2024 chances, but also has handed them like a brick as they're drowning going into 2028.
Look, I don't think any of this is going to. I can't know what the economy is going to be like in 26 or 28. But considering the path that we're on, and considering the level of competence with those currently in power, I'm not very hopeful that things are going to look very good in the short to the near to midterm. So in the scenario where the economy is still has gotten worse and Trump is unpopular. Who knows what other kinds of crises have been set aflame between now and then. I don't believe a Democrat's going to be laying out the case against all that, and the response is going to be, well, you stuck up for Biden in 2024. Those two things are not going to be easily made equivalent. That's why I swear, if I'm a Democrat right now, and I'm trying to think about how am I going to prepare for 26 and 28, I'm far more focused on how do I best prosecute the case against what's going on with the Trump administration right now, and yoking Republicans to that, which is an easier thing to do, and more relevant to the average voter than what happened, 2 to 4 years ago with Joe Biden.
I agree, but I also think it presents just another challenge this party doesn't need right now when they're wildly unpopular. And look, here's the other problem, Bill. The mainstream media, the legacy media, fair or not, are also implicated in this cover-up. I mean, in the perception of a cover-up. And so it's easy to imagine, in order to restore their reputation as fair and balanced arbiters of straight news, that it will become like a litmus test question. Like, just like every Republican should be asked, who won the 2020 election? Did Joe Biden win the 2020 election fair and square? they're all going to get asked, like, when did you know that Joe Biden wasn't fit? Do you think Joe Biden was fit to stay president? Should he have, all those questions you could imagine the media asking, like, partly because they're legitimate and partly because they want to, like, whitewash themselves. Biden wash.
I'm sorry, say the last bit again.
I think there's an incentive for the media to ask Democrats about Joe Biden,
well,
not only because it's a legitimate question, but because it helps essentially launder their own culpability.
I don't think there are plenty of reporters, I think, that did raise these questions. And, the pushback didn't really come from, like, beat reporters. It came from, Democrats. They didn't go into 5-alarm fire mode with it. But, the Wall Street Journal did its, famous piece before the debate, talking about what concerns people had. That report got aired when Scher made his comments. Those were well covered.
Yeah. Let me make this point, Bill, by the way. The Scher report comes out, like, I don't know, February 10th. 2 days later, Donald Trump attacks Nikki Haley's husband, who's serving in the military on a deployment, and says that our NATO allies, he will not defend them if they are attacked by Russia, if they have not fully paid their dues. So there you go, Donald Trump. The Scher story was a dominant media story. And Donald Trump changes the subject from Joe Biden's age back to Donald Trump. And how could you not report on these? These are two catnip stories if you're the media. Of course they were going to move off of Joe Biden coverage and go to Donald Trump coverage.
Well, Trump's always good at making sure the story is about him, no matter what the situation is. But even before that point, I mean, not just the Scher report, but Biden's response to it got a lot of media coverage and not terribly favorable, quite frankly. So I don't think the media is at fault here. And I also don't fault them for reporting the story now. I mean, there are legitimate questions to ask. I mean, you read any presidential biography of a president who had health issues, there's going to be a section about what was known, what wasn't known, and try to piece together what really happened there. I mean, that's important for our contemporary knowledge and for history. So I don't fault them for that. The only thing I'm really complaining about is, and I think this is being driven more by the media than certain folks in the media, creating this assumption, asserting. I mean, you're a reporter. You're allowed to ask whatever question you want. You're allowed to ask the meanest, loaded, slanted question. You're allowed. But it doesn't force everyone else who has to answer it to take your premise at face value. I think the premise that there's an obligation for Democrats to attack those who defended Biden or disavow your own defense of Biden, I don't think is politically necessary to go forward.
All right, Bill Scher, any other thoughts or things you want to plug?
Nothing else to plug. I mean, check out my Biden article at the Washington Monthly, which published on Tuesday. I got to work on a column for today. Well, maybe reconciliation. We'll see. But I got to put pen to paper once we get off here.
Awesome. All right. Well, stay tuned for my piece in the LA Times about the Biden story. And stay tuned for more of us here in the DMZ. Bill Scher, always a pleasure.
Take care.